So with that being said, I'm just going to pass it along here to Mike.
Thank you, John. Welcome everyone to another virtual meeting. So I don't know about any of you, but I have about 7 or 8 of these a day. So looking for some personal contact soon. Really cool. I was actually just checking the leaderboard of the next PGA Tour event, and we got Canadians in 1 and 2 right now, Adam Hadwin and Nick Taylor. So that's pretty exciting. And I appreciate the opportunity, John, to just give a welcome to all of our great volunteers. And it's been a while since I saw many of them. So just a couple of updates I wanted to give you, and starting with COVID, which has been a pretty incredible challenge for all of us. One thing I wanted to be clear with everybody here is just how proud I am of our entire team, who has adjusted and pivoted many times, to get through these challenging times. And at the forefront of every decision we made, health and safety was a priority, both for our staff, our players, and of course our volunteers. And I want to thank everybody for being patient as we worked through this. Nothing was going to be perfect, but we wanted to ensure that we got it right, even if it took time. So thank you very much to everybody for your patience. In terms of our role in returning to golf this year, we did our part like everyone else to shut down golf, shut down our office, to ensure we helped to flatten the curve. And we all know that golf naturally aligns to physical distancing, and we felt that golf would be one of the first sports to come back. And boy, did golf come back. And I'll touch on that in a minute. But I really want to give a shout out and a thank you to our We Are Golf partners. So the We Are Golf is an industry collection of all of the associations that help drive and support the game. Organizations like the NGCOA, the PGA of Ontario, the superintendents, the club managers, and of course Golf Ontario. And we work together to develop safe return protocols and work directly with the government to ensure we were meeting the mandate and we were providing a safe pathway to golf and being leaders in sport and providing recreational normalcy, to Ontarians. So we were successful. It was definitely trying at times, I can tell you. The number of emails we were getting about how we should be more aggressive in getting golf to be opened. I really don't want to revisit those 3 weeks. Not a ton of fun, but we were successful in getting golf open probably sooner than many thought. So May 15th was a great day. Following that, of course, we had to make decisions about Golf Ontario programs, and championships was certainly a biggie. And as I said before, we took our time to make sure that we worked through a number of different channels to make sure that we were making the right decisions at each turn. And that included, of course, our host facilities, our local provincial health officials, of course, our legal counsel, but also, as many of you know, we did some consultation with our volunteers and players to get a sense of where their feelings were in terms of, having championships this year. And for sure, the results spoke for themselves that the majority of people really would like to see championships return. So that's what we endeavored to do. It took us weeks to ensure that we had everything in place and that we were meeting the government mandates to bring back our championships. And so we developed, again, another comprehensive set of protocols to allow that to happen. And I really want to thank John and Rob and Judy and Mallory and everybody who played an incredible role in putting those together and then adjusting them based on questions we were getting from volunteers. As I said, it wasn't going to be perfect, but the principle here was to get it right, even if it took some time. And so a big thank you to everybody who was involved in putting together a competition calendar, which is definitely unusual. I get that. No team events, and a number of other events fell off, but we felt this is a schedule that we could handle, that we could execute very well and ensure that was safe for everybody. So we are all very excited. We're excited for our championships. We're excited for a great set of protocols that I know we're all eager to follow and will, to ensure that we are leaders when it comes to safe sport. But also I'm excited for our players and, of course, our volunteers, because we are certainly all in this together. And we hope for a great couple months of championships. Lastly, I just want to note a couple of additions this year. As part of our commitment to making sure that when we are visiting our host communities, we are having more of an impact than just our championships. So we have created a new program that will contribute to frontline workers, and we'll be making donations directly to local hospitals. We will endeavor to do more in recognizing some people that went above and beyond, that are connected to our host facilities, that we also can recognize, that whether that be at our prize presentation or in other ways. So, and then of course, I'm sure John will be highlighting a new role for our manager of sport, Mallory Damon, who will be our safe sport officer, or safety cop, as I call her. But her job is to just have an eye for physical distancing, for our protocols, and making sure that somebody's accountable and looking at this every day when they wake up, to ensure that we're all doing our part and we're making sure we're doing everything that's within our control to have a great summer. So, golf is booming. By all counts, many clubs are up 20% in memberships. Probably the hottest item in golf right now is a boxed golf set, believe it or not. So that is your starter sets, junior sets. I'm sorry to tell you guys, if you're looking for a junior set right now, you're waiting until September. So I tried to get a set for my daughter, and even TaylorMade, our great partner, is like, got to wait till September. So golf is in a great place. Hopefully that continues. There's tee sheets are just jammed. So we are looking forward to a great summer this year, another return for great Golf Ontario championships. And I believe that Golf Ontario has played a meaningful role in all this. I don't want to downplay or overplay our role, but we work together. I said from the beginning, we are going to be all in this together, and I'm proud of all of that. So thank you to all of you for joining us today, for being part of a great team. And I hope to see some of you out at championships this year. Apparently John tells me I'm non-essential at championships, but hopefully I can convince him that I might be able to show up. So have a great meeting, guys. I'll stay on a little bit longer and turn it back to you, Johnny.
All right, thanks, Mike. Greatly appreciate it, and thanks for coming on. Next up, we've got our manager of sport, Mallory Damon, here to address some of the return to play protocols that were. Oh, I gotta unmute her. She's saying, I think.
Thank you. Sorry, that was my fault.
That's okay. So yeah, so just Mallory, if you want to just take it away here, that'd be great.
Sure. You're welcome to flip that slide if you want. So, I mean, Mike covered a lot of the high level stuff of what I've been working on over the last little bit. And as I'm sure most of you or all of you have seen at this point, is our return to play provincial protocols. I wanted to highlight a few key things, and then some of the kind of thought process behind why we're doing what we're doing, what the intention is behind it, and why the focus is just keeping everyone safe. And so for me, that's almost entirely the only lens I'm using to look at a championship. I've been to enough and have run enough that I know the ins and outs. But for me, which allows me to kind of step to the side and say, okay, that's great. I know that that's going to run, and I know that our championships team is going to do a great job of that. So I can look at it purely from a safety perspective. And while the golfers intrinsically by playing will be naturally probably pretty safe, and that's why golf was able to open when it was able to open, given COVID, but it allows me to look at not just the players, but primarily our folks that are going to be there, you guys, at the championships. So as we were putting the provincial protocols together to return to golf and to competition, we really focused on, like Mike mentioned, the We Are Golf guidelines and the protocols that they've put into place, as well as we're constantly keeping an eye on the government protocols and as they're changing, most notably over the last few days of communities instituting the mask rule for being in public spaces and things like that. We're keeping an eye on all of that stuff on the regular and adjusting where necessary. The key thing for me when it comes to these protocols is, for some, they seem really strict. For others, maybe not strict enough. To me, the best part about them is that there isn't a need, or given the nature of where we are in the province and where we might be come the end of this tournament schedule, I don't see a lot of these protocols changing, if at all, which I like as the person keeping an eye on safety, primarily because then once you learn them, you're not having to worry about changes and things being different from event to event, both from a volunteer standpoint, a staff standpoint, and from a player standpoint. So if they come and experience their first event and all of these protocols are in place and they learn them, it won't come as a surprise when they get to their next event. For us, the changing the schedule to reflect first tee starts and the flow of players is really high priority for us in terms of being able to restrict the opportunity for gatherings. So doing all of our events as a first tee start is the first step in that, and just minimizing the risk overall. So we've tested out the high priority the touch points and where there's the most interaction and how we can minimize that or make that as safe as possible. When it comes simple things like eliminating caddies and eliminating spectators, instantly allows us to control the number of people on the property at a given time. And so that allows us to kind of go through some of the things that I'm primarily looking for and keeping those things in place. Once we had the protocols all together and we were comfortable with them, I've spent the last number of weeks reaching out to every local public health department and every bylaw office in the community that we're going to let them know that we're coming, to let them know what we'll be doing, and to share our protocols with them so that they had the kind of first right of refusal to say, this doesn't work for our community, we're concerned about XYZ. It was an opportunity to have a conversation. I was really happy that all of the feedback was super positive. They were very pleased with our protocols, and don't see any concerns with us coming into town, which is really, really great. So my focus now is just to make sure that we're going to be kind of keeping on top of that and that they work. It was great to put them together on paper, and we've had lots of conversation and lots of consultation. But just last Thursday, we took the opportunity to actually run a simulation. And we set up those key high touch points to test them out, to make sure that what we had on paper and in the protocols and what we plan actually works in a real life scenario. We made some tweaks along the way, which was really great to kind of get a feel for what it looks like, how we can do things better, where we didn't expect a backup of people. And I'm quite confident that these changes that we've made and small additions to the role of registration and starter and scorer and even the range attendant allow us to keep everybody super safe. It really keeps things as normal as possible for a championship without being overdone with COVID rules, but still making everything really, really safe. Things like the addition of the wellness check at registration and prior to even arriving at the championship and everyone receiving that to say, here's your opportunity. If there is anything you're not feeling great about, please don't come. And we understand that that's just the nature of this given year. 2020 is going to be a different championship year, and that's okay. And I think the nice part about all of this, in a weird way, is that everyone's experiencing it together. It's not something that Golf Ontario's just decided, we're going to make all these random changes to make our championship safer. Everyone's experiencing this. They've all been playing golf at this point, and I'm hoping that that will make our small changes not as monumental to cover or to overcome for our competitors. The other thing I'll note before I pass back to John is the key thing for all of our communication to this point, especially from a health department standpoint and a bylaw office, and even with the clubs, is, and you may have noticed even in the way that I've talked about it so far, is we're very intentional with the use of championship or competition or qualifier. I've eliminated the verbiage of tournament or event from my vocabulary for this year. I think that's really important for two reasons. One, because it allows who we're telling who we're talking to understand the role we play as a provincial sport organization, and that government has given us the okay to go and do these things. And it's not just a willy-nilly event or something that's been slapped together without any thought process. It is very intentional, and that we have the okay to do those sort of things. And that's been valuable in my communications from a health side, to let them know that it's not just because we want to, but there's an intentional provincial process behind hosting a championship and a qualifier. That's it for me, John.
All right, thank you, Mal. I'm just gonna go back to this chat room here because for some reason I've got that line on there. I'm trying to figure out how to get rid of it.
Good.
So if you can just bear with me for a second. I've got some great tips here in the chat room. Sorry for the delay, guys. I'm not too sure how to get rid of that one, guys.
Ginny's right. We're good with it.
Okay. All right, well, sorry about that. We're going to bring on Jade here, the new Sandy. She's very excited. She's going to walk us through the document that kind of everyone has seen kind of at the forefront of everything to do with really what we're doing with volunteers and so on. And that is the volunteer protocols and waivers. So Jade, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Jade Slaska, the new Sandy, and I'm going to go over the new protocols that we've put in place for the 2020 season. The protocols, when we were putting them together, our top priority was the safety of all the volunteers and the facility staff, Golf Ontario staff, competition competitors, and all of their families. We wanted to make sure that we were providing a safe environment for everybody. We will continue to adapt to the new public health measures and guidance and we'll keep you all informed if any updates are made, and we'll ensure that everyone strictly adheres to the host facility standards and restrict gatherings to maintain physical distancing and to limit the spread of the virus. So one of the policies that one of the protocols that we've put in place is daily self-screening. It's put in place to help prevent the potential spread of the virus. If a volunteer suspects that they have any symptoms, they should stay home to prevent the spread, even if the symptoms are minor, just like Mallory said. We all understand it. It's just better to stay home. If you can give John and Rob as much notice as possible, that'd be great. But again, if you wake up that day and you're not feeling the greatest, it's just best to stay home. The volunteer that has symptoms should be tested. If the test comes back negative, they should just stay home until their symptoms kind of go away. If an individual gets tested and it comes back positive, we'll ask them to cooperate with us in public health to identify close contact. If public health deems it to be a risk to other players, volunteers, or staff, we'll cooperate with them and the individual to make sure everything is good. Physical distancing is the simplest and most effective way to prevent potential infection. Golf Ontario will practice physical distancing while in the office, and we ask all our volunteers to adhere to the physical distancing practices while on the courses. So that means staying 2 meters away, 6 feet apart, and eliminating physical contact with other people. So no handshaking, touching other people's belongings, sharing items, or using someone else's cart. Personal protective equipment is used to reduce volunteer exposure to the virus. PPE has limitations and doesn't exactly eliminate the hazard, so volunteers must maintain physical hygiene and physical distancing and frequent disinfectant practices. Golf Ontario promotes physical distancing and health screening practices over wearing the mask, I guess. So face covering and non-medical face masks will be made available to all volunteers, but they're not required to wear them unless physical distancing is not possible. And with the new policies kind of put in place for all of Ontario, when you're inside the facility, you have to wear the mask. Gloves will also be made available to volunteers, but again, we don't require volunteers to necessarily recommend that they wear the gloves, because practicing personal hygiene and regular hand washing will be far more effective than gloves. Volunteers will be given a personal hand sanitizer bottle and wipes, along with gloves and masks will be available, and cart dividers will be available. Any volunteer that is traveling, volunteers should travel alone unless they're traveling with someone who is in the same household as them. Arriving at the facility no more than 20 minutes before your assignment and leaving the facility immediately after your assignment is finished. At least once a day, you should disinfect your whole car. So the inside of it with a disinfectant wiper spray, the handle, seat belt, steering wheel, radio, anything that's kind of touched, just to prevent spreading in your car or being on all the touch points. Overnight stays will be minimized and are not permitted without the approval of Golf Ontario staff, and packing your own food and water is recommended when it's practical. So, or takeout meals can be taken to your accommodation if preferred. You can go to the next slide, John. So expenses, we have updated our volunteer expense policy and procedures to make claiming expenses easier and safer for volunteers. So travel expenses, any volunteer that's traveling or driving in their own car will be given 42 cents or reimbursed 42 cents per kilometer, or if you're using the 407, only if it significantly reduces the amount of travel time, you'll be reimbursed for the toll charge, or if you don't have a transponder, the camera charge, you can claim that as well. You just have to have the receipt. Accommodations, Golf Ontario will book all accommodations and will confirm with the hotel at the time that they are following the government guidelines, and will make the best effort to ensure that there can be a fridge in the room so that you can bring your own food or takeout to your room will be encouraged. So meals, we know it's going to be a little bit different this year, but Golf Ontario will make certain that volunteers have access to lunch and refreshments, and that there is a designated area in or near the tournament office to eat and rest. John and Rob, I think, will try to make sure that that's available for everybody. For those eligible, a meal allowance for breakfast and dinner will be provided so that each individual can decide what their can decide what they're comfortable with. For safety reasons, to accommodate volunteers wanting to bring their own food or beverage, and to eliminate the need of handling paper receipts, we will provide a meal allowance for breakfast of $10 or dinner for $30 under any of the following circumstances. So if you're staying overnight, or if you have a really early start before 8 a.m. or a really late day after 6 p.m. And the process for submitting claims, we used to require paper copies, but now everything can be done online, and the form can be found on your Better Impact under the volunteer expenses. The electronic way of submitting forms now will be much better for physical distancing and eliminating those touch points and maintaining everybody's safety. An expense form must be completed and submitted no later than 30 days after the event. And we strongly encourage that you use the new online expense claim form. However, we will still accept the old form if you're not able to do it online. So the uniform, it hasn't changed. So Golf Ontario, white volunteer shirt, black or tan golf pants, skirt, shorts, or skirts. Golf Ontario rain jacket, preferably black, free of logos, and hats free of logos as well. I guess we sent out an email recently saying that since there have been changes in all the orders that had recently been placed at the beginning of the season, we have canceled all those previously placed orders and asked you to resubmit your clothing requests so we can put them together. We've put together all of them today, and we should be shipping them out today or tomorrow. Okay. Yeah, so Rob will confirm assignments if he hasn't already done so. So remember to arrive no more than 20 minutes before your assignment. All volunteers must leave immediately after their assignment is complete. And remember to, before any volunteer is officially assigned, they have to fully read and understand the volunteer assumption of risk waiver and release of liability and COVID-19 agreement that can be found on your volunteer profile. That's all for me.
All right, perfect. So I see that there's one question in the chat room here from Megan, just asking if regarding the assignments for volunteers, we have scheduled some extra volunteers, you know, one to two extra tournament officials or referees. But at the same time, we also have staff available. You know, one of the reasons that Robbie and I will be at the tournaments together is so that we can, if anything needs to change or people have to withdraw. I know, you know, even with our first qualifier right around the corner there, we've already had to do a last minute change. So yes, we will have the opportunity to replace anyone should a last minute cancellation come up. So I'm not sure if there's any other questions. Okay, we'll move on here. So I just wanted to kind of just talk briefly about our tournament operations for this year. I mentioned about, you know, Robbie and myself, we're going to be spending a lot of time together. We've got Grant is on the call as well. Grant been with us for a couple of years now, and we got Jack too. He's our other tournament assistant. So the four of us will be at every tournament together. So it's going to help with setup and obviously with the additional responsibilities we have this year. So at every tournament, we're going to have our tournament director as well as a staff greeter. And you know, as Mallory mentioned before, one of the duties of this greeter is going to be the pre-screening. So this is going to be the first checkpoint, if you will, for our staff. And it's always going to be a staff person. They're going to be, you know, asking the questions and obviously bringing to my attention or to Robbie's attention if anything needs to get addressed. The next kind of important person is going to be the range attendant. And I know that sounds kind of weird given this year, but the range attendant is going to be the first checkpoint. We are making all players report to the driving range first. And, you know, I'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's all about controlling the flow of the players on the golf course. Another staff responsibility or host club staff would be the 10th hole food station. Obviously, we can't have, you know, all the players on the patio, all the players coming inside the clubhouse to get meals after the round. So we're going to be setting up a 10th hole food station, which would probably be generally manned by a clubhouse food and beverage person, and they'll be handing out boxed lunches and bottles of water for all the players. And of course, the other people that we're going to have on the tournament grounds is going to be you guys. It's going to be the tournament officials and referees. And as I mentioned earlier there, that we will hopefully have several starters and several scorers, because it will make for a long day and long shift. So that's our intention with some of the tournament personnel and responsibilities. Host club volunteers, again, going back to some of the principles of our operations overall, is going to be what's essential. I would love to say that all host club volunteers are essential, but we really need to limit the amount of personnel on site. With that being said, we're going to have a ninth hole live scoring and pace of play checkpoint. So kind of going back to the old days there a few years ago, where we just had the ninth green and the 18th green checkpoints. So we're going to have those in place for this year. So we're eliminating the checkpoints at 4 and 13. But we're going to replace those with hydration stations. So again, as everyone's probably seen during these last few weeks here, it's just so hot out right now, and we can't have the normal coolers of water that we usually do, just because of all the touch points related to that. So we will be hopefully having a host club volunteer handing out bottles of water to players only. So we're going to get that looked after as well. And as I mentioned before, the 10th hole food station as well. So again, player flow, I briefly chatted about that earlier. So if you can think about it, as players arrive at the facility, they will be directed to, with all of our A-frame signage, they will be directed to player check-in. And this is also going to be for the accompanying adult, if there is one for players 18 and under. So the players will then check in, get pre-screened with the staff greeter, and then make their way to the range attendant. The range attendant is going to be one that's going to be, checking on how long they've been at the range. Again, we're saying 15 to 20 minutes. Your first 15 to 20 minutes is going to be at the range. From there, you can make your way to the putting green, and then from there to the clubhouse or to the first tee. And again, it's just controlling the flow of players so that everyone is not bunched all together at one area. Clubhouse, we're stage 2 right now. It's hard to say what it's going to be like at the end of the month. Maybe indoor dining might be available, but right now, from what we've gathered now with most facilities, has been about patios. Marquee tents are going to be available for those facilities that have them, as long as there's at least one open wall. So even having having meals on the patio or in the marquee tent will be available for not only just for players, but for our volunteers and staff too. So and Jay mentioned this earlier as well about the volunteer flow. Again, it's the same thing. Your first checkpoint as volunteers is really to check in with the staff greeter, and kind of get that, even though you've done the self-assessment, just getting the pre-screen from our staff greeter as well is going to be important. So that will be your first kind of, once you've parked, no earlier than 20 minutes, 30 minutes before your assignment, then you'll kind of report to the check-in area. And then from there, you'll probably make your way to the tournament office to get your equipment, and so on. So the other thing too is going to be evacuations. That's probably going to be the big one with all the stuff that's going on. We've got these late thunderstorms that are popping up now, and it's going to be tricky, especially with everyone jumping on carts, or Robbie and I have discussed about trying to give ample time for players so that they can just walk in. But really, we may have to rely on some of the staff at the course and some of our own staff and our volunteers, with assigned carts. Very important that we all keep our own cart. We don't change carts. So the evacuation right now is really just having players report back to their tournament vehicle, which kind of goes along with, what the accompanying adult is for junior tournaments. Okay, questions. So I see Gloria's asked a question here about, 15 minutes is not a lot of time to get organized. And I think that's a great point. I think that, like I said, it's going to be 20 minutes to 30 minutes before your shift. Our staff are there to cover any overlap if need be. And, we're hoping that, even if it does become, listen, you could show up earlier. It just means that you have to remain kind of in your vehicle, and you can't gather. You can't, come hang out at the clubhouse or the tournament office. It's really, we're trying to restrict all that stuff and kind of restrict that flow of volunteers. But more than happy to arrive, 30 to 40 minutes before your assignment, but just hang out in the parking lot. Okay, so some of this stuff has already been touched on, and I'll kind of reiterate some of the things that we're talking about here. And I know Mallory mentioned some of these points. And again, the principles behind this stuff has always been about limiting the risk, limiting the amount of people that come on site. So an interesting point came out when Doug Ford released all the go ahead. He mentioned that PSOs could run single competitor events, which golf was included in that, and we were allowed spectators, which was a great thing for especially for our junior tournament. So, but the key word is we're trying not to use the word spectator. They're the accompanying adult, and that accompanying adult can really be anybody. It could be a coach. It could be an uncle, an aunt, whatever the case may be. The point is that person has to be bringing that junior on site. So that means that player, that accompanying adult needs to be part of that social circle for that junior. So with that keeping in mind, if it's mom and dad bringing the junior to the golf course, that means no additional coaches, no media on site, no other spectators can be available. And so what we're asking with in our pre-event communication with the players is that the spectators or the accompanying adult must check in with the staff greeter as well. They'll be all the accompanying adults for junior players 18 and under. So regardless of it's a junior tournament or it's an amateur event, those accompanying adults will have a badge with them that they must have on at all times. Again, trying to keep in line with the reducing the amount of people on site. Keeping in line with that theme. We've basically just did a blanket statement, no caddies. And of course, if we have more spectators and we have more caddies, it makes it hard to evacuate the golf course and keep everyone safe. So, blanket statement is that there's no spectators unless there's an accompanied adult or no caddies. Motorized carts, again, it became a little bit of a challenge with motorized carts because of the cart dividers. And listen, we've all been through the examples of, players don't want to play with so-and-so because they smoke, or, so-and-so is sick. So, that was one of the reasons why we've just said no carts, because if we're going to have an event with 114 players on it, and there's going to be, 90 players on the course at all times, that's 90 single carts. And that was just unrealistic to do unless we started bringing in a whole bunch of carts to facilities. And really the only one that was allowed to do that was Deerhurst. Deerhurst has a fleet of 80 carts already, so it kind of made it easy for us to make that decision that single cart use is allowed at the senior championship, as well as the disability too. Documentation, tournament documentation. So this is the whole location sheets. This is the hard card. This is the the pace of play card, all that information that we normally hand out with pieces of paper, the location sheet, all that stuff now is going to be online. Players are going to be asked if they want to review that. They can they can go onto the tournament website, go onto our app, and view that information. We'll be, Robbie and myself, are, with our pre-event communication, we'll be sending links to all the players so that they can get this information up to date. So, that's kind of where we're going with the touch points, right? Is just trying to remove that as much as possible. We'll still hand out scorecards. So players will still get the physical scorecard from them or from us, but that will be basically the only piece of paper that is handed out at this time. Okay, questions. So I've got a couple questions here, which is great. So I see Tom has said, will shift assignments be sent out in advance? Yes, we'll have those sent out in advance prior to the qualifiers. I know Robbie just did Black Bear, and I plan to do Silver Lakes shortly. So those will all be coming from the tournament directors for the championship and qualifiers. Documentation is going to be available. Again, all that documentation will be available on the tournament website. I would suggest, if you guys are, smartphone friendly, download the Golf Ontario app so you can pull up the tournament website quite easily, and you'll be able to access all the tournament documentation. At some point, we're going to move all that stuff to the top of the website, or the top of the tournament website, so that it's just a easy click for players. Jerry, great question there about, you mentioned about an app. Yeah, there's going to be the app here. It's just under Golf Ontario, really, in the App Store, so you can try searching for that. If not, Robbie or myself can send out a link on how to get that app. And Lee, to your point, yes, there will be some paper copies available. It was really just for the players, so yes, some of the referees will have paper copies. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Jerry's found the app. That's good. Okay, so as Mallory mentioned, we had a little fun, and we did the championship simulation. We asked one of our staff members, Jesse, to be the difficult player. Sorry, I'm just reading here some last minute questions here. All groups will be threesomes. In regards to deciding who walks with the player, it's going to be the accompanying adult with the badge. I'm not too sorry, Lisa. I'm not too sure I understand your. I'm not too sure what you mean by will there be a score sheet protection for scores. Our intention is to have that all done through the Blue Golf software. So you will have direct access to that, and you'll be able to enter that stuff online. So I'll get to scoring procedures in a minute. So just some of the things here when it comes to starting procedures is that really we're not taking anything away from what we've done in the past. All we're doing is just kind of making some adjustments in terms of our procedures for this year. So first and foremost is that the assigned starter, will be the only one to use the starters box. So players can't go in there to get tees, players can't go in there to get pencils, players can't go in there to get scorecards. That's all going to be the starter's responsibility. In fact, we'll do some additional training on site at the championships and at the qualifiers, but essentially the way we've got we're going to have the starting set up, it will be, the drawers will only be facing the starter. And we'll have hand sanitizers and PPE everywhere. So, we'll have, one of those squirt bottles of hand sanitizers on the starters table, and starters can sanitize their hands in between groups. Gloves will be made available as well. So, that all the PPE that you want will be made available. So one of the kind of the new things that we're trying to achieve this year, and is with physical distancing, is having each player stand at a 10 pole. So if you think about it, the starter's tent is a 10 by 10, and there's four 10 poles. If we can have the starter just kind of direct each player to a 10 pole, then we can actually go through the process with them. All right, so one other adjustment that we're going to make is that in order to get the scorecards handed out, the starter will have the scorecards with the pencil clipped and place it on the table and have the marker pick up that player's scorecard. And of course, we're going to have that player do it one at a time. So some other starting procedures is we're just going to remind players not to touch the flag stick with only just using your club. Really, is you can touch the flag stick or the pin caddy that we've purchased for this year too. So we'll have every event we'll have the lifters, and players can use those as well with their club, as long as they're not touching the flag stick or the pin caddy with their hand. And of course, one thing that, and Mike said it from the top, is really just maintaining the physical distancing, and that includes the players' equipment. I know you can catch yourself off guard. I know I played golf a few times this year already, and just even having the bags 6 feet apart so that the players are not forced to head to one area with where all the golf bags are. So keeping the golf bags and the players separated all times is important. And then obviously reminding the players about any local rules that we're going to have in play for that tournament. And one other thing that we kind of chatted about at our rules committee level was having the marker sign the scorecard before teeing off. It was just something that we can get done right out of the way. That's probably going to be the only signature on the card, so might as well have them do it right at the start, so that they're not doing it in the scoring area. Okay, so the scoring procedures for this year, there's been a couple of adjustments as well. One being that we're only going to have one scorer in there. So again, just eliminating the amount of people that are inside that tent. We're going to have tablets available for scorers, and one chair in the tent, and so that they can punch in the scores. The first thing though is once the group is walking off 18, we're going to get the scorer to greet players outside the scoring area and kind of ask them if they need a referee. That way they haven't come into the scoring tent, they haven't come into the scoring area yet, and we can resolve any issues. Once that's been achieved, we're going to have all three players enter the roped off scoring area. And for this year, we're going to have a lot larger area than normal so that we can always maintain that 6 feet of distance. Once in the scoring area, the scorer will direct players to opposite tent corners. So we'll have the player and the marker in the tent, while the other player is kind of in the waiting area, but is still in the scoring area in the roped off areas. Okay, so the next procedure after that, the next step would be the marker to place the scorecard on the table, the player to come over, visually look at it and attest to the card. So it doesn't have to be touching the table at all. You can just have the strip over the scorecard and look at it. And if it's good to go, then the scorer will then, the scoring official will then grab the card and start to type it inside the tablet. Once we've got all the scores in the tablet, the scorer will then read back the totals to the player. And we're just going to work clockwise from where the scorer is, the position. So if we have the marker on the left-hand side, he goes to the waiting area. The player comes over, he moves to where the next position is, and we have the person that was in the waiting area come inside the scoring tent. And once all the scores have been entered and all the scores have been read back to the players, we're going to hand out the tee gifts, which will be at scoring. And again, sorry, that will be only for championships. Obviously, we don't have gifting for any of the players. And one thing that we haven't mentioned so far is that players at check-in will receive a personal clip on the bag hand sanitizer. That will be for at all championships. Each player will be given that bottle right at player check-in as soon as they arrive on course. So some other scoring procedures. Once all the players have been checked in, or sorry, once all the scores have been read out and the gifting has been handed out to the players, we're going to remind the players either, to what needs to be done, whether they need to leave if the patio is not open. If the patio is open, they're more than happy to stick around and have a beverage on the patio or have a meal. Again, trying to promote the fact some additional revenue opportunities for our host facilities. And then, really for our championships only, if we got the clubhouse leaders, we're going to ask them to stay on site just in case of a playoff or, for the award ceremony. Okay, so just going to check here. We got some questions here. I see some of them. Thanks, Mallory, for answering some. Yes, the player will verbally attest to the card. Yeah, you can have the marker amend the scorecard, but at the same time, once there's no need to initial it. All it just needs to do is the score needs to be adjusted on the card. Yes, the player will not be touching his card. Yes, the scorers will keep the cards, and then until a staff member approaches, and then we'll take the cards inside the. That's a great question. The staff people will remove the cards from the score. And again, I just would like to just kind of give everyone comfort that, we are going to have the extra staff on site, and we're going to be there to help. Not all of our volunteer positions were filled, so staff will be doing some of these roles as well. So, and if there's, obviously 7.5 hours of first tee times is a long day. So, we try to get as many starters as we could, but if not, staff will be filling those roles, same as being in the scoring tent. Okay, I'm going to bring up Lee now. I'm just going to unmute her.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes, you're good to go.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry,
Okay.
Lee, sorry to cut you off there. Tom just threw in a last minute question there. What is the tee time gap? Great question, Tom. For qualifiers, it's 10 minutes, and for championships, it's 11.
Okay, first slide, please, John. Okay, basically for referees, our life is going to be the same as it has been in the past, except that it's going to be different in some ways. We will be having course tours on what would normally be the practice round day, although we won't be having formal practice rounds like we've had in the past. And that will be followed by an officials meeting. Depending on the clubhouse, if there's room inside the clubhouse with a very large room that we can socially distance and conduct our meeting in there, we will, but it may end up that we have to have our officials meeting outside, perhaps by our golf carts, or we'll have to find a location to do that. one of the things I would suggest for the tournament rules chairs is that you include, when you do your schedule and you assign the zones, that you also include a starting time for each official so that they know when they should be arriving at the course. Because we're going to have two tournament directors, both John and Rob, on site, if the tournament rules chair wishes to continue assisting with course setup and doing hole locations and tee markers, that's fine. But if you would rather relegate or return that duty to either John or Rob, you're also free to do that. That's your choice which you do. One of the things that I guess is going to look a little different is we're going to see players looking at their phones a lot more on the golf course, because they're not going to have the yardage book and they're not going to have the hole location sheet. So we just have to sort of get it through our head that we may see a player whipping out a phone in the middle of the fairway, which is something we're certainly not used to seeing. So we just have to brace ourselves for that. Drive backs, as was mentioned earlier, there will be cart dividers for us. And I believe they're the type that's simply attached with bungee cords. And it shouldn't take too long to just pop it in if you do have to drive a player back. Once you've brought them back to their ball, then you're going to have to wipe down their side of the cart, wipe down the divider and the touch points on the other side of the cart. We will also, I believe, have masks to give to the players in the drive back.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just interrupt there, Lee. Sorry about that. There'll be disposable masks available in your cart.
Okay. And then one thing that I was thinking about, and I was thinking about what it's going to be like to sit with a mask on out in the heat of the day. And personally, I guess in my own mind, I've decided that the mask is going to sit on the seat beside me. And as I approach players, I'm going to put the mask on. But I'm going to make sure that I do that when I'm relatively close to the player so that they can see my face as I'm coming up to them. And hopefully I'm not having one of my grumpy days and I'm not scowling as I approach them. But I approach them with a smile on my face and look as friendly as I can look, at least, before I pop the mask on. Because really, if we don't do that, they'll be looking at a pair of eyeballs and a mask coming at them. And I think we also have to stop and just think how we're going to speak to players, because now they're not going to see any facial expressions if we're wearing a mask, and it'll be very easy for them to misinterpret what we're saying. And certainly that holds true with junior players in particular. They don't always understand if we're a little bit stern when we give them directions or a little bit curt, that we're not yelling at them, we're not picking on them, we're just simply giving them instructions, but they misinterpret it. So I think we just need to be very aware that if we are close to players, and most of us, as I've watched all you guys officiating, we do tend to get rather close to players and help them with their drops and things like that. And so it's going to either have to be a conscious effort on our part to make sure that we social distance from the players, or that we're wearing a mask if we're going to get that close to a player. So I just wanted everybody to think for a moment about how you're going to approach players. And we just don't want a faceless mask coming up to them. Next slide, please. In terms of the local rules, both touching the flagstick with your hand and social distancing are part of the code of conduct now. And so that if we do see a player touch the flagstick, chances are it's going to be inadvertent. Or physical distancing, you know, somebody gets a hole in one and they high five each other. It would be a reaction. But the first step will be under the code of conduct that it's a warning, that nobody's going to be penalized for one of these infractions immediately. And then after that, if there's a breach, then it would go straight to a 2-stroke penalty. And the third infraction would be the disqualification. I really don't think it's going to go that far. We found that last year with all our warnings, that was all we needed. So I don't think it's going to be a problem, but that's the guideline that we're going to follow for the championships. The last topic is bunkers. And one of the things the rules committee spent a fair bit of time debating how to deal with bunkers and whether they were going to be simply ground under repair and take them out of play totally, whether we were going to have disturbed areas in the bunkers be ground under repair. And we opted to go with preferred lies in bunkers because we're going to have situations, and I know some of you may be familiar with some of the golf courses that in the past play with a local rule where the player lifts their ball, rakes the spot, then puts the ball back. If a bunker hasn't been touched at all this year, and there may very well be courses that we go to where that is the case, then finding an undisturbed area may be very difficult, and distinguishing what's disturbed and what's not. There may be weeds growing in the bunker. So we've opted to go with preferred lies in the bunker to start with. And if we arrive at a site where we find that the bunkers are being maintained in some fashion and they're not total disasters, then we may change and go to simply abnormal course condition in the bunker for a disturbed area. So we may change that local rule as the need arises. But we're starting with preferred lies, and then we'll just see where that takes us. Because certainly each course is going to be different. And that's all I have to say. And I think, judging by all the chats that popped up, I think I stirred up something.
Since I wasn't talking there, Lee, I was able to answer most of the questions.
Perfect.
So I think we're good to go. Megan brought up the point about the code of conduct penalties, and yes, the code of conduct has been updated. I believe Judy, who's on this call as well, has updated our code of conduct and ethics policy to include COVID procedures. But the most important thing is that's a 3-page document as it is. So we're going to just spike those out in the notice to players. So we will have that, the flag sticks as well as physical distancing on the score or on the notice to players.
And in terms of a tournament site, that will be covered in more detail during the officials meeting.
Okay. I'm going to, I appreciate everyone coming here today. Does anyone have any more questions? Mallory, is there anything you want to add? Okay, I think we're good, everyone. I appreciate your time. It's going to be an exciting year. I'll tell you one small story there, that when we opened up registration on June 24th, the 3 men's AMS qualifiers sold out in 11 minutes. So definitely there's a demand for players that want to play, and we're kind of the good and the bad, right? The people that didn't get in are a little upset with us right now, but unfortunately that's all we could manage at this time. So it's definitely going to be exciting year, and some players may not be able to go back down south, so we may have some really good strong fields. So we're excited to see how it all plays out. I just want to thank everyone for coming on board, and thanks very much. If you have any questions, please let us know. Don't be afraid to reach out. Robbie and I will get this recording to all the other officials who were unable to be on today. So we'll get that out shortly. Thanks everyone, and we'll see you soon, very soon. Take care.